Hello, story lovers. Tonight, we're diving into a tale of passion, secrets, and choices that could change everything. Hearts will be broken, love will be tested, and every twist will leave you on the edge of your seat. Comment below where you're watching from, and if this story moves you, hit like, subscribe, share it with someone who loves a powerful love story, and tap the bell so you never miss the next thrilling chapter. Ready? Let's begin. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like dying insects. Elena pressed her palm against the glass door of her boss's office, hesitating before she knocked. Through the frosted pane, she could see Adrian's silhouette hunched over his desk, motionless as a statue. 3 sharp raps, no answer. She knocked again, harder this time. The door swung open on its own, revealing Adrian Blackwell staring at a photograph in his hands. His knuckles were white around the frame's edges. "Mr. Blackwell?" He didn't look up. The office smelled of old coffee and something sharper, whiskey maybe. At 2 p.m, "I need to leave early today," Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt. "My daughter has a doctor's appointment." Adrian finally raised his eyes. They were bloodshot, rimmed with exhaustion. "Your daughter?" "Yes, Sophie. She's been having seizures again." He set the photograph face down on the mahogany desk. Elena caught a glimpse of a woman with dark hair before it disappeared from view. "How old is she?" 7. Adrian stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city. 40 stories below. Traffic crawled like ants through concrete veins. "My son would have been 7 next month." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Elena felt her throat tighten. She'd worked for Adrian for 6 months and knew almost nothing about him beyond his reputation. Brilliant, ruthless, untouchable. "I didn't know you had a son. I don't. Not anymore." He turned to face her, and something in his expression made her take an involuntary step backward. "Tell me something, Elena. What would you do to save her? Your daughter. If she was dying and you had one chance to keep her alive, what would you sacrifice?" The question felt like a trap. Elena's pulse hammered in her throat. "Anything," she whispered. Adrian's jaw tightened. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a sealed manila envelope. "Then I have a proposition for you, but you need to understand something first." He walked toward her, closing the distance until she could see the fine scars along his jaw, barely visible in the harsh light. "What I'm about to ask you to do is illegal, dangerous, and if you say yes, there's no going back." Elena's hands trembled as she looked at the envelope. Through the paper, she could feel something hard, rectangular, a keycard maybe. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to steal something from the pharmaceutical company across the street. Tonight, after everyone's gone." His voice dropped lower. "And in exchange, I'll give you access to an experimental treatment for Sophie. The kind that isn't available to the public. The kind that could save her life." The room tilted. Elena gripped the edge of his desk to steady herself. "Why me?" "Because you're desperate," Adrian said, his tone almost gentle. "And because I am, too. What are you stealing?" "Not stealing. Recovering. They took something from me 3 years ago. Something that belonged to my son." His expression hardened into something cold and unreachable. "The same experimental drug I'm offering you. They refused to give it to him when he needed it. He died waiting for approval that never came." Elena's stomach twisted. She thought of Sophie's last seizure, the way her small body had convulsed on the kitchen floor while Elena screamed into the phone for an ambulance. "If I get caught, you won't. I've planned everything." Adrian held out the envelope. "But you need to decide right now. Your daughter's appointment is in 2 hours. By tonight, this offer disappears." Elena stared at the envelope, at Adrian, at the photograph lying face down on his desk. She reached out and took it. "Good," Adrian said, and for the first time since she'd entered his office, something like relief crossed his face. "Meet me in the parking garage at midnight. Level B3. Come alone." Elena turned to leave, the envelope burning in her hands like evidence of a crime not yet committed. "Elena," she stopped at the door. "There's something else you should know." Adrian's voice was barely audible now. "The people we're stealing from? They're not just a pharmaceutical company. They're connected to some very dangerous individuals. If they find out what we're doing, they won't just prosecute us. What will they do? Adrian's eyes met hers, and in them she saw the answer before he spoke. They'll kill us both. The parking garage smelled of oil and cold concrete. Elena's breath fogged in the air as she waited by her car, checking her phone for the 100th time. 12:03 a.m. Headlights swept across the darkness. A black sedan pulled up beside her, and Adrian emerged wearing all black, his face hidden beneath a cap. You came. I said I would. Elena's voice sounded braver than she felt. Adrian handed her a small earpiece and a sleek device that looked like a modified phone. This will loop the security footage. You have exactly 12 minutes from the moment we enter to get to the 15th floor, access the lab, and retrieve the vials. Any longer and the real feed kicks back in. 12 minutes. The key card will get you through the doors. I'll be monitoring from here. He pointed to a laptop in his passenger seat, screens glowing with security camera feeds. If anything goes wrong, I'll call you. If I say abort, you run. Don't look back. Don't try to save the mission. Just run. Elena nodded, slipping the earpiece in. Her hands were steadier now, fueled by adrenaline and desperation. They drove in silence to the pharmaceutical building. It loomed against the night sky, all glass and steel and secrets. Adrian parked in an alley 3 blocks away. The vials are in cold storage, Section D7. They're labeled as Batch 4479. You'll know them because they have a red biomarker stripe. He pulled out a small insulated bag. Put them in here. Don't let them warm up. Elena took the bag. What happens if I get the wrong ones? Then Sophie dies, and we've risked everything for nothing. Adrian's tone was matter of fact, but his jaw was clenched. Don't get the wrong ones. She stepped out of the car. The night air was sharp against her face. Adrian, he looked up. Why didn't you do this yourself? For a moment he said nothing. Then, because I did. 3 years ago. That's how they knew to take everything from me. My company, my reputation. My son's last chance. His voice cracked on the final words. I can't afford to be seen anywhere near that building. But you're nobody to them. Just another desperate parent. The words should have stung, but they didn't. Because he was right. Elena crossed the street, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her teeth. The keycard worked on the first try. The lobby was empty, sterile white floors gleaming under emergency lighting. I'm in, she whispered. Good. Elevators are to your left. You have 11 minutes. The elevator ride felt endless. Elena watched the numbers climb, thinking about Sophie asleep in her grandmother's apartment, unaware that her mother was committing a felony. 15th floor. The doors slid open to reveal a corridor lined with laboratories, all dark except for the red glow of exit signs. Straight ahead, 3rd door on the right. Elena moved quickly, her footsteps too loud in the silence. The keycard worked again. Inside, the lab was a maze of equipment and refrigeration units humming with white noise. Section D7 is in the back corner. You have 9 minutes. She found it. Rows of vials in temperature-controlled storage. Her breath caught when she saw them. Small glass tubes with red stripes, labeled with a serial number she'd memorized from Adrian's instructions. Batch 4479. She reached for them. Elena, stop! Adrian's voice was sharp in her ear. She froze. What? There's someone in the building. 4th floor. Security guard making early rounds. Can I still get out? Not the way you came in. You'll have to use the maintenance stairwell. It exits near the loading dock. Elena grabbed 6 vials, placing them carefully in the insulated bag. Her hands were shaking now. Moving! Where's the stairwell? End of the hall, left turn. You have 7 minutes before he reaches your floor. She ran. The bag felt impossibly heavy in her hands. Behind her, she heard the elevator chime. He's early. 6th floor now. Move faster. The stairwell door was locked from this side. Elena's stomach dropped. Adrian, it won't open. Use the override code. *4779#. She punched it in. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. It's not working. 8th floor. Elena, you need to hide. She looked around frantically. A supply closet. She ducked inside just as she heard footsteps in the hallway. Through the crack in the door, she watched a security guard pass by, his flashlight beam sweeping across the walls. He stopped, turned, walked back toward the lab she'd just left. He knows something's wrong. Adrian's voice was tense. The storage unit is open. He's calling it in. What do I do? There's another way out, but you're not going to like it. Tell me. 14th floor. There's a sky bridge that connects to the building next door. It's under construction, but it's accessible. You can cross and take their elevator down. How do I get to 14 without using the elevator? Adrian was quiet for a beat too long. Adrian? The air vent. Above the closet you're in. Elena looked up. Sure enough, there was a vent cover. You have got to be kidding me. Do you want to save your daughter or not? She climbed onto a shelf, unscrewed the cover with shaking fingers, and pulled herself up into darkness that smelled of dust and metal. The bag of vials banged against her hip as she crawled through the narrow space. Straight for 20 feet, then dropped down through the next vent. It opens into a conference room. Elena's elbows scraped against metal. Sweat dripped into her eyes. Behind her, she could hear voices now. Multiple guards. She found the second vent and dropped down, landing hard on a conference table that groaned under her weight. Sky bridges through the double doors, west wall. She ran again. Found the bridge. It was nothing but a metal walkway suspended between two buildings, open to the wind. Below, the city stretched out like a circuit board of lights. Halfway across, she heard shouting behind her. They see you. Run. Elena sprinted, her lungs burning. The door to the next building. She slammed into it, locked. Adrian! Working on it. Hold on. She turned. 3 security guards were entering the sky bridge, their radios crackling. The door beeped. Unlocked. Elena stumbled through and slammed it behind her, her heart nearly exploding from her chest. Take the stairs. 2 flights down, there's a side exit. She didn't stop running until she reached Adrian's car. He was already driving before her door was fully closed. Neither of them spoke for 5 blocks. Finally, Adrian pulled into an abandoned lot and turned to her. His face was pale, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were bloodless. Did you get them? Elena held up the insulated bag. Adrian's shoulders sagged with relief. You did it. We did it. He reached for the bag, but Elena pulled it back. The treatment for Sophie. You promised. And you'll have it. Tomorrow. I'll personally deliver it to her doctor. Elena studied his face, searching for deception. Instead, she saw only exhaustion and something else. Gratitude, maybe. Why do I feel like I just made a deal with the devil? Adrian's laugh was hollow. Because you did. We both did. He started the car again. I'll take you back to your car. Go home. Act normal. If anyone asks, you spent the night at your mother's place with Sophie. What about you? I have to disappear for a while. Until this blows over. Adrian. Elena's voice stopped him. That photograph on your desk. Your son. What was his name? His jaw tightened. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Michael. His name was Michael. Elena wanted to say something comforting, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she placed her hand on his just for a moment. He didn't pull away. They drove through the empty streets, 2 criminals bound by grief and the laws they'd broken. Elena stared out the window, watching the city blur past, and wondered if she'd just saved her daughter's life or destroyed her own. When Adrian dropped her at her car, she turned back. Will I see you again? His expression was unreadable in the darkness. That depends on whether they figure out who broke into their lab tonight. And if they do? Adrian's eyes met hers, and in them, she saw the weight of everything they'd done. Then we run, together. 3 days later, Sophie received her first dose of the treatment. Elena watched as the clear liquid disappeared into her daughter's IV line, praying it would work, praying she hadn't risked everything for nothing. Adrian had delivered it himself, arriving at the hospital in a borrowed car with dark circles under his eyes. He'd stayed for 10 minutes, watching Sophie sleep, his expression unreadable. Thank you, Elena had whispered. He'd only nodded and left. Now, a week after the heist, Elena sat in her apartment scrolling through news sites. Nothing about the break-in, no police reports, no investigations. It was as if that night had never happened. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello? Elena. Adrian's voice was strained. We need to meet, now. What's wrong? Not over the phone. There's a diner on 5th and Morrison. 20 minutes. He hung up before she could respond. The diner was nearly empty. Just a handful of late-night regulars nursing coffee at scattered tables. Adrian sat in the back booth, his face half hidden by shadows. When Elena slid in across from him, she noticed his hands were trembling. They know, he said without preamble. Elena's blood turned to ice. How? Security footage. They found a glitch in the loop. It was only a few seconds, but it was enough. He pushed a newspaper across the table. The headline made her stomach drop. Pharmaceutical theft. Breakthrough drug stolen. Company offers $500,000. Reward for information. They're calling it corporate espionage, Adrian continued. They've hired a private investigation firm. Former FBI. These people don't stop until they find answers. What do we do? You disappear. I have contacts, fake IDs, new names. I can get you and Sophie out of the country by tomorrow night. Elena shook her head. She's in the middle of treatment. If we run now, if we stop the doses, she'll die. I know. Adrian's voice was hollow. That's why I came up with another plan. Something in his tone made Elena's skin prickle. What kind of plan? Adrian looked at her for a long moment, and she saw conflict warring behind his eyes. I turn myself in. Tell them I acted alone, that you had nothing to do with it. They won't believe you. They will if I give them proof. Security logs showing my access codes. Financial records of payments I made to a professional thief. A confession. Elena's throat tightened. You'd go to prison. Better than watching another child die because of my failures. He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. You have to let me do this, Elena. It's the only way Sophie survives. Tears burned behind Elena's eyes. There has to be another option. There isn't. The investigators are already asking questions. Your name will come up eventually. But if I give them a clean narrative, if I give them someone to blame, they'll stop looking. Adrian. I've already made peace with it. His grip tightened on her hand. I couldn't save Michael, but I can save Sophie. Let me do this one good thing. Elena wanted to argue, to find some other solution, but the weight of Sophie's life pressed down on her, heavier than any guilt. When? Tomorrow morning. I'm meeting with the company's legal team at 9. By noon, I'll be in custody. They sat in silence, their hands still clasped across the worn diner table. Around them, the fluorescent lights hummed and coffee cups clinked against saucers. The mundane sounds of a world that kept turning regardless of the lives being destroyed within it. I'll pay you back, Elena finally said. Somehow. When this is over, don't. Adrian's voice was firm. This isn't about repayment. This is about making sure that what happened to Michael doesn't happen to Sophie. He stood to leave, but Elena caught his wrist. What will happen to you? In prison. I have good lawyers. With cooperation and a guilty plea, maybe 5 years. 7 at most. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'll survive, Adrian. Elena's voice broke. Why are you really doing this? He looked down at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, his mask cracked completely. She saw the grief, the guilt, the desperate need for redemption that had been driving him all along. Because I'm tired of carrying ghosts, he whispered. He pulled away gently and walked. Out of the diner without looking back, Elena sat alone in the booth, her coffee growing cold, trying to understand what had just happened. Adrian Blackwell, the ruthless businessman who'd built an empire on calculated risks and cold decisions, was sacrificing his freedom to save her daughter. She should have felt grateful, relieved. Instead, she felt like she'd just lost something she hadn't realized she needed until it was gone. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check your email. Delete it after reading. Destroy this phone. I'm sorry. Elena's hands shook as she opened her email. One new message, no subject line. The attachment was a video file. She clicked play. The footage was grainy, black and white, time-stamped from 2 years ago. A pharmaceutical lab. Not the one they'd broken into, but similar. And there, clear as day, was Adrian, stealing vials from cold storage. But he wasn't alone. Elena's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the second figure. The woman from the photograph on his desk. Dark hair, delicate features, the audio crackled to life. Are you sure about this? The woman's voice was soft, frightened. It's the only way to save him. Adrian's younger face was desperate. If we can just get the treatment, if we can prove it works. They'll destroy us if we're caught. Then we don't get caught. The video cut to another scene. Same lab, different angle. Adrian and the woman leaving. But this time, security guards were waiting outside, shouting. A struggle, a gunshot. The woman crumpled to the ground, Adrian screaming her name. "Vivian, no, no, no," more guards. Adrian being dragged away while he fought to reach her body. The video ended. Elena stared at her phone screen, her mind racing. Adrian had done this before. He'd tried to steal the same treatment 2 years ago. And the woman in the photograph, the woman who must have been Michael's mother, had died helping him. But that wasn't what made Elena's blood run cold. It was the second attachment in the email. A document, an autopsy report, for a child named Michael Blackwell, age 5, cause of death, acute respiratory failure, secondary to experimental drug toxicity. Elena read it 3 times, her hands shaking harder with each pass. The treatment Adrian had stolen 2 years ago hadn't saved his son. It had killed him, and now he'd given the same drug to Sophie. Elena's phone rang. Adrian's name on the screen. She answered, her voice barely functional. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew the treatment was toxic." Silence on the other end. Then quietly, "The dosage was wrong. They miscalculated, but they've fixed it since then. The formula Sophie received is different. It's safe. How can you be sure?" "Because I've spent 2 years making sure." His voice was steady now, almost calm. "I've worked with underground chemists, bribed lab technicians for the updated research. The version Sophie has is not the same one that killed Michael. But you didn't tell me. You let me believe. If I'd told you the full story, would you have trusted me? Would you have let me help Sophie?" Elena couldn't answer because she knew the truth. She would have refused. She would have run. And Sophie would be dying right now. "I sent you that video so you'd understand," Adrian continued. "When I turn myself in tomorrow, they're going to paint me as a monster. A criminal who used you to commit another theft. And you're going to let them. You're going to testify that I manipulated you, threatened you, left you no choice." Adrian. "It's the only way this works, Elena. The only way you stay free and Sophie gets the treatment she needs. They'll believe you're a victim. They'll have their villain. Everyone wins. Except you. I stopped winning the day Vivian died." His voice was hollow. "I stopped winning the day I watched them bury my son in a grave that had my failure carved into every letter of his name." "This is not sacrifice, Elena. This is penance." Tears streamed down Elena's face. "There has to be another way." "There isn't, and you know it." The line went quiet except for the sound of their breathing. 2 people connected by crimes and grief, and a child's life hanging in the balance. "I'll never forgive you for lying to me," Elena said. "I know. But I'll never forget what you did for Sophie either. I know that too." Adrian ended the call. Elena sat in the diner booth, the video evidence of his past crimes glowing on her phone screen, and realized she was holding the power to either save him or condemn him. And the worst part was, she had no idea which choice was the right one. Outside, dawn was breaking over the city. In a few hours, Adrian would walk into that meeting and destroy his life to protect hers. Elena thought about Vivian, about Michael, about all the ghosts that haunted Adrian Blackwell. She thought about Sophie, asleep in a hospital bed, the toxic hope flowing through her veins, and she made her decision. Elena arrived at the pharmaceutical company's headquarters at 8:47 a.m., 13 minutes before Adrian's scheduled confession. The building looked different in daylight, less fortress and more glass monument to corporate power. She'd spent the entire night awake, the video playing on repeat in her mind. Vivian falling, Michael dying, Adrian's face as his world collapsed around him. The receptionist looked up as Elena approached the desk. "Can I help you? I need to speak with whoever's handling the theft investigation." "It's urgent. Do you have an appointment?" "No, but tell them Elena Reyes is here. Tell them I know who stole the drugs." 20 minutes later, she sat in a conference room across from 3 people. A sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who introduced herself as Director Patricia Carmichael, a younger man in an expensive suit who said nothing, and a former FBI investigator named Frost, whose gaze could have cut glass. "Ms. Reyes." Carmichael leaned back in her chair. "We were planning to contact you this afternoon. You've saved us the trouble. I know about the theft. We assumed you might, given your employment with Mr. Blackwell." Carmichael slid a folder across the table. We also know you were in this building the night of the break-in. Security footage from the street shows a woman matching your description. Elena's stomach dropped, but she kept her expression neutral. Then you know he forced me to do it. Forced? Frost spoke for the first time, his voice like gravel. How exactly? He threatened my daughter. Said if I didn't help him, he'd make sure she never received the treatment she needed. The lies came easier than Elena expected. He knew she was sick. He used her as leverage. Carmichael and Frost exchanged glances. What treatment are we talking about? Frost asked. The experimental seizure medication. Batch 4479. Elena pulled out her phone, showing them Sophie's medical records. She has a rare form of epilepsy. The standard treatments weren't working. She was dying. And Blackwell offered to help. Yes, for a price. Why would he need to steal drugs from our facility? Carmichael's eyes narrowed. He has enough money to buy them legitimately. Because it's not about the drugs. Elena took a breath, committing fully to the path she'd chosen. He's using them to bargain with foreign buyers. The theft was commissioned. He needed clean samples with intact chain of custody documentation. This was the story she and Adrian had never discussed, the narrative she was building in real time to save them both. Proof, Frost demanded. I don't have physical evidence. He was careful, but I can tell you about his offshore accounts, his encrypted communications, the buyers he was negotiating with. Elena spent the next hour spinning an elaborate web of lies, mixing truth with fiction in proportions designed to be believable but unprovable. She gave them Adrian's offshore accounts, real ones she'd discovered during her employment. She gave them names of shell corporations that existed but had legitimate purposes. She gave them everything except the one thing they needed: concrete evidence. Why come forward now? Carmichael finally asked. Why not the moment he threatened you? Because my daughter needed that treatment, and because I was terrified. Elena let genuine tears fill her eyes. But I can't live with this. What he did, what he made me do. It's not who I am, Frost leaned forward. Ms. Reyes, do you understand what you're confessing to? Regardless of coercion, you committed a felony. I know. You could go to prison. I know that too. The room fell silent. Carmichael studied Elena's face like she was reading a balance sheet, weighing costs against benefits. There may be a way to work with you, she finally said. If you're willing to testify against Blackwell, if you help us build an airtight case, what kind of deal? Immunity from prosecution in exchange for full cooperation. You wear a wire. Record his confession. Give us everything! Elena's heart pounded so hard she was sure they could hear it. And my daughter's treatment? Continues uninterrupted. Carmichael's voice softened slightly. We're not monsters, Ms. Reyes. We just want justice. Then I'll do it. Frost pulled out paperwork. This agreement states that in exchange for your testimony and cooperation, we'll grant you immunity. But if you warn Blackwell, if you deviate from our instructions in any way, the deal is void and you face full prosecution. Elena signed without hesitation. They fitted her with a wire 30 minutes later, a device so small she couldn't feel it against her skin. Frost explained the technical details, but Elena barely heard him. Her mind was racing ahead to what came next. He's due here at 9, Carmichael said, checking her watch. It's 8:52. Call him. Tell him you need to meet before he comes in. Somewhere public. The cafe across the street. Elena's fingers trembled as she dialed Adrian's number. He answered on the first ring. Elena, what's wrong? I need to see you. Before your meeting, please. I'm 2 blocks away. What? The cafe across from the pharmaceutical building. 5 minutes. She hung up before he could ask more questions. Frost handed her an earpiece. We'll be listening. If things go south, say the word Sophie, and we'll move in. Elena crossed the street to the cafe, her heart threatening to break through her ribs. Through the window, she could see Carmichael and Frost taking positions in an unmarked van. Adrian arrived exactly 5 minutes later. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw her face, his expression shifted to concern. What happened? They sat at a corner table. Elena kept her hands visible, away from the wire hidden beneath her shirt. I know about Vivian, she said quietly. About what really happened 2 years ago. Adrian went very still. How? You sent me the video. Remember? I sent you that so you'd understand why I need to do this. Not to what? Make me question everything? Elena's voice rose slightly. You lied to me, Adrian. About the treatment, about the risks, about what this drug did to your son. I told you the formula is different now, is it? Elena leaned forward, pitching her voice for the microphone. Or is that just what you need to believe? How do you know it's safe? How can you be sure it won't kill Sophie the same way it killed Michael? Adrian's face drained of color. Elena, what are you doing? I'm asking for the truth. All of it. No more secrets. No more lies. She could feel tears burning behind her eyes, but she pushed forward. Tell me about the offshore accounts. Tell me about the buyers you were working with. Tell me why you really needed those drugs. What are you talking about? Adrian's eyes widened with understanding. Elena, are you... She kicked him under the table, a sharp warning. I need to hear you say it, she continued louder now. I need to know that what we did was for Sophie. Not for money, not for some black market deal. For my daughter. Adrian stared at her, and she watched understanding flood his features. Understanding followed immediately by betrayal. You're wearing a wire, he whispered. Elena said nothing. They got to you. They offered you a deal. I'm trying to save us both, Elena hissed. Just tell them what they need to hear. You want me to confess to crimes I didn't commit? Adrian's laugh was bitter. You want me to become the monster they think I am? I want you to survive this. Elena grabbed his hand across the table. Please, just give them something. Anything. Make this right. Adrian pulled his hand away slowly. When he spoke again, his voice was cold, empty of everything she'd heard there before. You want the truth? Fine, here it is. He looked directly at her, through her, to the people listening on the other end. I stole those drugs for one reason, revenge. The same people who refused to treat my son, who let him die while they worried about regulatory approval, they don't get to profit from his death. So yes, I recruited Elena Reyes. Yes, I used her daughter's illness as leverage. Yes, I planned to sell those drugs to the highest bidder and burn this entire company to the ground in the process. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. Adrian, no. You want a monster? Adrian stood, his chair scraping against the floor. I'll give you one. Because that's what grief does. It turns good men into criminals. It turns desperate fathers into thieves. And apparently, his eyes locked onto Elena's, filled with something between rage and heartbreak. It turns allies into traitors. He walked out of the cafe without looking back. Frost and 2 agents moved in within seconds, following Adrian outside. Elena watched through the window as they tackled him against the hood of a car, pressing his face against the metal while they cuffed his hands behind his back. Adrian didn't resist. He just stared at the ground, his jaw tight, his eyes hollow. Carmichael appeared beside Elena's table. Well done, Ms. Reyes. That confession will seal the case. Elena couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. She'd just destroyed the only person who'd tried to save her daughter. The immunity deal stands. You're free to go. Carmichael placed a business card on the table. We'll need you for the trial, but until then, try to move on with your life. Move on. As if that were possible. Elena stumbled out of the cafe, ripping the wire from her skin the moment she was around the corner. She threw it in a trash can and kept walking, her vision blurred by tears she couldn't stop. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sophie's doctor. Treatment working beyond expectations. Seizures completely stopped. Sophie asking for you. Elena collapsed against a brick wall, sliding down until she sat on the cold sidewalk. Around her, the city moved on, indifferent to the life she'd just traded for her daughters. She'd made her choice. She'd sacrificed Adrian to save Sophie. And the worst part was, she'd do it again. That night, Elena sat in Sophie's hospital room watching her daughter sleep peacefully for the first time in months. The monitors beeped steadily, showing vital signs that grew stronger with each passing day. Mom? Sophie's eyes fluttered open. You've been crying. Happy tears, baby. Elena smoothed Sophie's hair back from her forehead. You're getting better. Is Mr. Blackwell coming to visit again? I liked him. He told me funny stories about when his little boy was my age. Elena's throat closed. No, sweetheart. He can't visit anymore. Why not? He had to go away for a while. Sophie frowned. Will he come back? Elena thought about Adrian being processed into the system right now. Fingerprinted, photographed, stripped of everything that made him Adrian Blackwell. Billionaire, and reduced to inmate number and an orange jumpsuit. I don't know. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Elena almost didn't answer, but something made her step into the hallway and press accept. Don't hang up. Adrian's voice was rough, exhausted. They gave me one call. I used it on you. Adrian, I don't apologize. Don't explain. Just listen. He paused, and she could hear voices in the background. The institutional sounds of booking and processing. The treatment Sophie received? It's real. It's safe. I spent 2 years and every resource I had making sure of that. She's going to live, Elena. She's going to grow up and have a normal life. At what cost? The only cost that matters. His voice softened. I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't let guilt destroy you. Don't let this choice turn you into what I became. He took a shaky breath. What you did today, wearing that wire, choosing Sophie over me, that's what a parent does. That's what love looks like when it has to make impossible decisions. You hate me? No. The word was immediate, certain. I understand you. There's a difference. Elena pressed her forehead against the cold hospital wall. I should have found another way. There was no other way. We both know that. Adrian's voice dropped lower. They're telling me I have to go now. But Elena, one more thing, yes? When Sophie asks about me, and she will, tell her the truth. Tell her I knew someone once who needed help, and I did everything I could to help them. Tell her that sometimes good people do bad things for the right reasons. Tell her that's what it means to be human. Adrian. The line went dead. Elena stood in that hospital hallway for a long time, the phone still pressed to her ear, listening to silence where his voice had been. When she finally returned to Sophie's room, her daughter was awake again, drawing pictures on a notepad the nurses had given her. Look, Mom! Sophie held up the drawing. It's me and you and Mr. Blackwell. We're all smiling. Elena took the picture, her hands shaking. In Sophie's childish rendering, the three of them stood together beneath a bright sun, stick figures holding stick hands. It's beautiful, baby. Can we send it to him, so he doesn't forget us while he's away? Elena looked at her daughter's hopeful face, at the drawing that represented a reality that would never exist, and made one more choice. Yes, she whispered. We'll send it to him. Because that was the least she owed the man who'd sacrificed everything so her daughter could have this moment. This breath. This life. Even if he spent the rest of his own locked behind bars. 6 months later, Elena stood outside the correctional facility with Sophie's drawing folded in her pocket. The winter air bit at her exposed skin, but she barely felt it. The trial had been swift. Adrian's confession, combined with Elena's testimony, had given the prosecution everything they needed. 7 years with possibility of parole in 5. The judge had been lenient, citing his cooperation and lack of prior criminal record. 7 years. Sophie was healthy now, living a life that should have been impossible. The seizures were gone, relegated to the past like a nightmare she was already starting to forget. She'd started 2nd grade, made friends, learned to ride a bike, all because of the man Elena had betrayed. Elena Reyes? A guard appeared at the security checkpoint. You're on the visitor list. Follow me. The visitation room was sterile and cold, divided by plexiglass barriers and filled with the murmur of desperate conversations. Elena took her seat, her heart hammering against her ribs. Adrian appeared on the other side of the glass. He looked thinner, older. The prison uniform hung loose on his frame, and there were new lines around his eyes. But when he picked up the phone and their gazes met, his expression softened into something Elena couldn't quite read. She picked up her phone with trembling hands. You came, Adrian said simply. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me. I wasn't sure I did either. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. But I'm glad you're here. They sat in silence for a moment, 2 people separated by glass and guilt and the weight of everything that had happened between them. Sophie sent you something, Elena finally said, pulling out the drawing. She pressed it against the glass. She made this the night you were arrested. She wanted you to have it. Adrian stared at the picture, his jaw working. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "How is she?" "Thriving. The treatment worked exactly like you said it would. She's been seizure-free for 5 months. Elena's eyes burned. "She asks about you constantly. Wants to know when you're coming back. What do you tell her?" "The truth. That you're away, but you're thinking of her. That you helped save her life." Adrian nodded slowly. "Good. She deserves the truth. So do you." Elena leaned closer to the glass. "I need to tell you something. Something I should have said the day you were arrested." "Elena, no, let me finish." She took a breath. "What I did, wearing that wire, testifying against you, it wasn't just about saving Sophie. Part of me was angry. Angry that you lied. Angry that you put me in an impossible position. Angry that you made me complicit in something I couldn't fully understand." Adrian's expression didn't change, but she saw his hands tighten around the phone. "I convinced myself I was protecting my daughter," Elena continued. "But the truth is, I was also protecting myself. I chose the easier path, the one where I got to be the victim instead of the accomplice, and I've been living with that guilt every single day since." "You made the right choice." "Did I?" Elena's voice cracked. "Because it doesn't feel right. It feels like I traded your life for Sophie's, and I'm not sure that's a trade I had the right to make." Adrian leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving hers. "You want to know something? The night before you wore that wire, I was planning to confess anyway. I was going to walk into that building and take full responsibility, but then you showed up in that cafe, and I realized you'd found another way, a way where you could live with yourself, a way where Sophie had her mother and her life. You let me think I'd betrayed you. You did betray me." Adrian's words were matter of fact, not cruel. But betrayal and sacrifice aren't always opposites. Sometimes they're the same thing wearing different faces. Elena pressed her palm against the glass. After a moment, Adrian mirrored the gesture, their hands separated by a 1/4 inch of plexiglass and an ocean of regret. "I should hate you," Elena whispered. "But you don't. No. I don't know what that makes me." "Human." Adrian's smile was sad, knowing. "It makes you beautifully, impossibly human." A guard announced 5 minutes remaining. Time, which had stretched like taffy through the silence, suddenly contracted to nothing. "Will you come back?" Adrian asked. Elena thought about all the reasons she shouldn't. The guilt, the complexity, the way seeing him made her question every choice she'd made. "Yes," she said. "If you want me to, I do. Why?" Adrian looked at her for a long moment. "Because you're the only person in the world who understands what I did and why I did it. You're the only one who knows the full cost." He paused. "And because when I close my eyes at night, the only thing that makes this cell bearable is knowing that somewhere out there, a little girl is alive because of what we did. Even if it destroyed us in the process." The guard called time. Elena stood slowly, reluctant to break the connection. "Adrian, one more thing. Yes, I forgive you. For lying about the treatment. For putting me in that impossible position. For making me choose." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I hope someday you can forgive me too." Adrian's eyes glistened. "Already done." Elena nodded, turned to leave, then stopped. "Actually, there is one more thing." "What?" She turned back, meeting his gaze through the plexiglass barrier. "When you get out, whether it's 5 years or 7 or 10, Sophie and I will be here, waiting, if you want us to be." For the first time since she'd known him, Adrian Blackwell's mask shattered completely. Tears streamed down his face, and he made no attempt to hide them. "I want that more than anything," he managed. Elena smiled through her own tears. "Then it's a promise." She walked out of the prison into the winter afternoon, where Sophie waited in the car with her grandmother, drawing another picture to send to Mr. Blackwell. The drive home was quiet. Sophie chattered about school, about her friends, about the science project she was planning. Normal things, childhood things, the kind of conversation that should have been impossible 6 months ago. That night, Elena tucked Sophie into bed and sat beside her in the darkness. "Mom?" Sophie's voice was small, sleepy. "Do you think Mr. Blackwell is okay?" Elena thought about Adrian in his cell, about the years stretching ahead of him, about the price he'd paid for a child who wasn't even his own. "Yes, baby. I think he's going to be just fine." "Good," Sophie yawned. Because I want him to meet my friends when he comes back, and see my science project, and have dinner with us like he promised. He promised that, in the hospital. He said when I got better, we'd all have dinner together and celebrate. Sophie's eyes were already closing. He said we'd be like a family. Elena's throat tightened. Did he? But Sophie was already asleep, her breathing steady and peaceful, her small body no longer racked by seizures or fear. Elena sat there for a long time, watching her daughter dream dreams that should have been impossible. Then she pulled out her phone and began to write. Dear Adrian, Sophie made you another picture today. This one has the three of us at a dinner table. She remembers your promise. We both do. 5 years isn't forever. We'll wait. We'll be here when you come home. E. She sent it before she could second-guess herself. 3 days later, a letter arrived. Prison stationery, Adrian's careful handwriting. Dear Elena, thank you for waiting. Thank you for bringing Sophie to visit. Thank you for giving me something to count the days toward instead of just counting the days themselves. You asked if I forgive you. The truth is, there was never anything to forgive. You chose your daughter. I chose redemption. We both got what we needed, even if it wasn't what we wanted. But 5 years from now, when I walk out of here, I'm going to take you both to dinner. Somewhere nice. Somewhere that serves ridiculous desserts and doesn't ask questions about where we've been or what we've done. And for one night, we're going to be exactly what Sophie drew in her picture. A family built on impossible choices and second chances. Wait for me, A. Elena folded the letter and placed it in a box with Sophie's drawings, with the immunity agreement she'd signed, with the newspaper clipping about Adrian's trial. Evidence of a life saved and a life traded in the complex, messy, beautiful truth that sometimes love looks like betrayal, and sacrifice looks like survival. And the right choice is the one that haunts you forever, while giving someone else a chance to live. 5 years wasn't forever. They would wait. And when Adrian Blackwell finally walked free, they would be there, ready to keep the promise made in darkness and sealed in a prison visitation room. Ready to become the family that had been forged in crime and grief and the desperate, imperfect love that saves us even as it destroys us. Outside Elena's apartment, the city hummed with 1 million lives being lived, 1 million choices being made, 1 million people trying to survive the weight of their own impossible decisions. Inside, a mother tucked her healthy daughter into bed, a drawing of 3 stick figures taped to the wall above them. And somewhere in a cell 70 miles away, a man marked another day off his calendar and allowed himself to hope. The end.